All right, we are on. Oh, okay. Has everybody given me your journal entries? Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, because you just walked in. She says, I haven't had time. I just sat down. Go ahead and get your reading questions out while I wait. While I stand over her and wait for her to give me her paper. Now, take your time. Oh, I thought it was your jacket. Okay, got it. This week, we are talking about nights. Everybody loves nights, right? Do we all love night? Oh, of course. Gotta be naysayers that don't like nights. What? There we go. So, the first question I asked you, and before I ask the question, I used this word chivalry. All right. What is chivalry? Okay, the first hand I saw was Bailey. I'm sorry, but she gets it. Okay, so we're connecting it with knights. Somehow it has to do with knights. So Roy, you had something. Okay. Okay. Good, very good. Okay. No, I'm not going to come read your thing. Does anybody have something to add to that? Maya? Oh, no. Oh, okay. All right, Ella.
The ideals of chivalry included service, loyalty, fearlessness, integrity, courtesy, and generosity.
Okay, yeah, and do you have something else, Bailey, in addition to that? That's yeah. I probably wouldn't follow it. So chivalry is a funny, I like words. Have you figured this out, that I really like words? And so there's a French word, chevalier, and it means like someone who rides a horse. And so chivalry are the people who have horses, the people who can afford horses, the people who then can become knights. And you see how the word morphs over time to become the code of honor of the people who have the horses who are able to become knights. I think it's so funny how words change like that, yeah. I do not think Chevrolet is related to Chevalier, although they are very, very close sounding. So I think what you guys said was perfect. They have a code of honor. I'm sorry, I'm just knocking things all over the place. They have a code of honor that they will protect those in need. But do you remember, was it last week or the week before, that we were reading about that truce of God, and all the knights in one area of France were swearing that, no, I will not steal your cows out of your field during this time. I will not pillage churches. I will not. And it sounds like not everybody was maybe following the code. Does that make sense? It is. But it was knights who were doing this stuff. Does that make it? Yeah, it was knights that were doing this stuff. And Dorothy Mills says something that maybe you're not sure what it means. She says, the ideals of chivalry were not always lived up to, but in an age that was often rough and violent, they were a civilizing influence. Hey guys. And they set a standard that was deeply respected. Are we listening? Noblesse oblige expresses what was required of those who were bound by the obligations of chivalry. Noblesse oblige. Does anybody, have you heard this term before? Do you know what it means? Can you guess? Yes, it is. Can you take a guess, just because the words are like words that we know? It is exactly noble obligations. Okay. It is, if you are of a certain class, if you are an aristocrat, if you have money, you are obliged to do certain things to your fellow man and to those below you out of courtesy. Courtesy is another great word. What word's courtesy? What does courtesy mean in English? Okay, like good manners, right? Courtesy is, but look at the word. Where do you use those manners? They came from the court. It's courtesy. How do you behave when you're at court? That's courtesy. So likewise, the nobleman had an obligation to protect, to defend, to help support, just because they're privileged in society. I have more money. I have more resources. I have more maybe friends. I have more ability to help. Does that make sense? So that's the idea of chivalry. How is that? How could we morph that noblesse oblige into a Christian idea? How is that a Christian idea? This just struck me. What do you think? And if we have more, we're supposed to share it, right? Right? We're not just supposed to sit on it and revel and roll in our money, right? We're supposed to help other people with it. So chivalry and knighthood is not equal to Christianity, but this was a Christian worldview in a Christian land, in Christian Europe, and there's overlap. Okay, so I think that was the first question I asked you. What were some of the ideals of chivalry? Now, the next section got a big response yesterday. Yes. You want the next question? Okay, let me read it first. I asked you to read about, she says, how children should behave. Now, if you're destined to be a knight, when you're 7 or 8 years old, mom and dad are going to send you to someone else's house to be raised there. And so let's pretend that Matthias is a great nobleman, okay, and he has a son, congratulations. And he is looking for, he wants his son to become a knight. And he sends him to Roy's house. Roy is also a great nobleman, congratulations to you as well. And so why would Matthias not just keep his son at home and train him to be a knight at home? All right, what do you think? This can be sometimes true. Okay, this is a sad truth, but I think it is true. Also, what was your idea, Justin? Okay, this is also sometimes, although it is wrong, I will tell you all it is wrong. Okay, think about it from the parent's perspective, though. What if, okay, Bailey has an idea. I don't know if she's laughing about it. I'm not sure I like it. That's okay.
Yes, to interact.
Well, I don't think that's what I'm going for exactly. Does anybody see? But isn't Matthias capable of having his own child be successful as a knight? He's a great knight. He's great. He's awesome. What do you think, Ella?
Maybe Matthias doesn't have the time or the capacity to raise up his son to become a knight. So, and maybe has lots of squires and lots of pages. And
Okay, so maybe Roy has many other pages, and he's like running a night school, right in his house. Here's another idea I was thinking of. Sometimes, believe it or not, it's hard. Parents aren't as hard on their own children. Sometimes it's very tempting to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, did you go out and practice with your sword and you got a bruise? Why don't you just come have some cocoa? And let's call it off for today." I'm just speaking of me personally, but Roy and the people in Roy's house, he's tough. He's like, "This is just some kid. I don't care. Get up, pick up your sword and do it again. You want to be a knight? Toughen up." You know, and maybe, you know, Mrs. Matthias might be, "Oh, just come have some, you know, have a brownie. Just take it easy for today." I don't know. I'm just guessing because this is what they did. And I was wondering, why not, if you are a household of nobility destined to raise knights, why not just train them in your own household? Why send them somewhere? And this is just guesses that I have of why. Yeah, Bailey.
Well, you never said Matthias as a knight.
No, I guess, but I was insinuating it because he's of the nobility, and most of the nobility would have gone through the knighthood process eventually. It is kind of like a school. It's like, yes, only if we all sent our kids to other people's houses all day to homeschool, and then the other parents are like, "Write it again."
Isn't that what we're doing here?
But it is what you're doing here. Okay, so just a second. I want to move on. I'm sorry. So these 7 or 8-year-olds are going to another household and they're being raised. And we have this book of etiquette of how it says a child should behave. Now, my students yesterday got into an argument with me. It's like, it says child, not knight. Maybe this is okay for a knight, but not okay for a child. Okay, I see hands, but just hang on. I see you. Let me read a few things. Okay, so we can get a feel for it in case you've forgotten. Arise betimes from your bed, which means get up early, don't sleep in until 10. And then you have to say I'm going to paraphrase, brush your hair, wash your face, say your prayers, go to breakfast, go to church. Look you be true in word and deed, the better shall you prosper. For truth never works a man's shame, but rather keeps him out of sin. Make no promise, save it be good, and then keep it with all your might. For every promise is a debt that must not be remitted through falsehood. Okay, so we're okay with this. But I think we get on a little bit, and then people start, this is why the hands are raised. When your better shows his will, be silent. And in speaking to any man, I like this, keep your hands and feet quiet. Don't fidget, you know. And look up into his face, and always be courteous. Now I must tell you shortly what you shall do at noon when your Lord goes to his meat. Be ready to fetch him water. Some of you hold the towel for him until he is done, and leave not until he be set down. And you've heard Grace said, stand before him until he bids you sit. Stand at the table. Do you remember in The Dragon and the Raven? Oh shoot, I'm getting that confused with another Henty novel, the one about the Crusades. There's a scene where the attendant stands at the table, but I think that was not The Dragon and the Raven. Sorry. And did he stand there? And did he stand and serve? Let courtesy and silence dwell with you. And then this is a popular one. Look ye be not caught leaning on the table, and keep clear of soiling the cloth. That's popular. Do not hang your head over your dish. Don't do that. But the interesting thing, here it is again. Take no seat, but be ready to stand until you are bidden to sit down. Keep your hands and feet at rest. Stand and sit not down to meat until you are told by him that rules the hall. And do not change your seat, but sit upright and mannerly where he bids. All right? Silence and awaiting the will of the master. I stand and I am ready until he says, you may be dismissed, you may sit down. And I asked you a maybe provoking question. What would life be like if that's what it was like for children today? All right, Bailey, fire away. You waited so patiently.
The children should be able to give their own opinion, but could be nice to others and do some work.
Okay.
But if we were
Yes.
that good right now, you wouldn't be having this talk. You wouldn't be having this conversation.
Because you wouldn't be able to talk back?
Yeah.
Okay, that is a very good point. Ella?
All right, I personally think that we would be neither better nor worse if we still followed those principles. We obtain several good habits from doing so, like saying grace and saying good morning to passers-by. Most likely, however, we would become bored or stale with these practices, and over the years, we would lose sincerity with our good intentions. That said, we should try to be kind and sincere from birth to death. So I think it's better for us to learn, like naturally learn, not like force.
Okay.
I think we should learn it for ourselves, because when we learn it for ourselves, it tends to be more sincere. And nobody wants like because I remember chance that those kids would grow up and kind of like leave that because they didn't like it, they didn't have a good childhood with that.
Is there a point when we learn things? I want everybody to chime in. Is there a point that you reach when you're working on learning to do something? And it can be anything. In this case, it's this boy learning to become a knight, okay? It could be your Latin. It could be, Maya and I were just talking about swimming. It could be learning to swim or learning a sport. Is there a point where it gets rough? And unless, I don't like to say it this way, but I will, unless something makes you continue, it's very tempting to give up. Do you all know what I mean? Yeah, and maybe you haven't. Maybe you ever they call it like hit the wall. You know, been pursuing something. And our goal, obviously, is for you guys to learn and for us as adults to have that within ourselves. Like somebody outside me doesn't have to make me keep doing it. I want to do it so much that I will keep making myself do it. You know what I mean? But we all know kids, and at this point I'm talking of kids if you have younger siblings in your house. Kids aren't really like that. Do you know what I mean? They don't have it within them, and you have to train them to keep pushing themselves. And so, I guess I'm straying from the subject a little bit, but that constraint of these young pages, you know what I mean, makes them keep walking in that direction when it gets hard. And oh, but I'm tired and I'm sore because I really did all this, you know, sword play yesterday, and I was riding the horse for so long, and I just want to sleep. And there's a force that says, no, you will get up, you will proceed. And maybe if left to our own devices, we wouldn't. But okay, but that's straight a little bit. Maya, go ahead. I'm blurry again. Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 And by the time you guys' age, you probably would have moved into Squire, too. You wouldn't be this little kid. Is there one more question for you guys? What's good? Okay, I'm just going to preface this by saying I do not believe in the adage, if you've heard this, children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah,
Like if you had been in my house while my kids were growing up, you would know Mrs. Ferguson does not live that way and does not believe this, okay? But is there value in it when you're young, being quiet and listening to what others have to say? Oh, there she's hyperventilating, yes.
There is. So that's where wisdom comes from, because wisdom is the result of knowledge and experience. And so it's good for kids who haven't had that experience to learn from older people who have experienced it. So I think it's good, but it's also good for little kids or kids in general to speak their minds or their opinions and ask their questions, because otherwise they're kind of ignored, and then when you're ignored, you don't feel loved, and then when you're not loved, you don't feel loved.
This is true. Okay, I'm going to go to Maya and then you're next, Bailey.
Oh, I like what she said about asking questions because I feel like part of listening to a kid is asking questions. But right now we're listening to you. But if we didn't ask questions and have curiosity, we wouldn't talk to you. We wouldn't talk to you. So I think that we're excited because, like she said, there are also times where we have gone through situations that are probably just like this and can say, I wish I had this. But also, I think you can't just be silent because you're not asking questions and not listening.
Okay, awesome. Bailey.
So this kind of thing, if we like that from seen and not heard, we would want to
You would say that part again?
women
Oh,
have much lighter.
okay, okay. But that applies to women, maybe not so much children. I'm not sure I see the connection.
Even if learner has to be reminded, not be shamed to speak,
Okay.
or learn if we're ashamed to speak,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't be standing up to people or older to be shamed.
Okay.
Scary.
Okay. So what I hear you guys saying maybe is that there's one that on one side it's shut up and do whatever you're told and don't ask questions and obey all the rules. This is this side. And this side is, hey, do whatever you want. I'm cool. And maybe somewhere in between here is the balance that's good. We obviously, I don't think anybody, even as kids, think it's beneficial to us to just have someone say, do anything you want, anytime you want, wherever you want. I mean, it sounds kind of good. It's like Pleasure Island, Pinocchio, you know, and then we all turn into donkeys. But this is not beneficial. Yesterday, people were talking, some of my students mentioned, and I think Maya, somebody here already said it, the tendency, if you really grow up and it's very authoritarian and very, very strict, when you get of a certain age, you might want to break out of that and just sort of go break all the rules because suddenly you can and you just want to experience things that you were kept from. But maybe somewhere in between is the balance. Yeah, Maya. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like if we were put in a just say that because we learned that we're not going to get anything if we're given something like that, we probably would be able to act.
Mm.
Like if we learn how to do things a certain way, especially in girls, we're probably going to be more knowledgeable
Mm.
all of them like that, so you don't really know what to do or what to act.
And habit. Do you notice how easy it is to do things that are a habit for you? Like if you get used to doing things a certain way, we notice this when we break our habits. If we go on vacation or something, and then it feels great the first day, and then we feel kind of tired because we're not sleeping our normal hours and we're not eating our normal food, and maybe we don't feel as good as we do at home. We follow habits. We train those habits. Then when we're set free, we sort of follow in those natural habits. Okay, well, Bailey, and then we'll move on. Yes. Mm-hmm. So an in-between that every family chooses for themselves. And so Roy, his training, just because the book that we have from the Middle Ages describes the training of a young page like this, doesn't mean every household is going to keep the same rules, does it? So maybe now suddenly Matthias and Roy are now brothers. Congratulations, things just keep changing in your lives. And so Matthias's son, I mean, goes to Uncle Roy's house, and Aunt Mrs. Roy, I don't know who she is, but they like their nephew, right? They care. They want him to be successful in his knight career, but it's possible that Aunt Mrs. Roy just says, oh, come on and sit down. You know, you've stood there long enough. Come on, have a cinnamon roll. I don't know what they're eating in the castle. That's where I go, cocoa and cinnamon roll. You know, maybe the rules are not always applied in the same way in every household, much like our households, right? And do your parents sometimes bend what are the normal rules in your household? Do you sometimes get to stay up later than you normally would? Maybe, I don't know if you have a bedtime. See, okay, sorry. But when I was little, my dad was very, very strict. But there was a night every week when there was a particular television show that I was allowed to stay up a half an hour past my bedtime so I could see the last half hour of it. This is a fond memory of my dad. Okay, let's move on. Can anyone become a knight? Oh my goodness. You raised your hand, you're committed.
Okay, I don't think so. You have to be rich and
Okay, if you are not from the nobility and if you're not wealthy, you probably aren't going to be. Okay, I'm going to do Alice and then Bailey. Oh, that's a good question. So somebody asked this yesterday because Dorothy Mills used the term of gentle birth. And it means born into the nobility or an aristocratic family. Okay, I'm going to go to Roy before he has a fit. So what I hear you saying is, one, it costs money, and you have to have the opportunity to train under someone. And two, maybe everybody's not able to cut it, if you know what I mean. Like, it's just too hard and strenuous to follow that life. Okay, Bailey, what do you have to say?
So the peasants do not listen much. The basic part, they have to train to stay brave. There we go. Tangle.
So I want to just interject something though that Roy said and Bailey just said, and I don't think Dorothy Mills said it, and I think it's an idea we get for movies, that you have to go out and do a brave thing before you get knighted. I'm not totally sure that, was it? Okay, well, okay. I am unsure about that. I cannot speak to it one way or the other, not sure. Ella?
I think it's possible for anybody to become a knight, but if, obviously if they have noble birth, it's easier, but if they are poor birth, then maybe someone could pour into them, or like someone could donate. I doubt that's gonna happen.
Okay, but if they showed particular promise,
Yeah.
perhaps. Maya, did you want to say something?
No, she said.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Roy? Oh. Okay. We're going to talk about that in a minute. No, I'm sorry. It just sounded funny when you said. Just a second. Roy, did you have more to say? Spurs. Yes. Do you guys remember, was this last week or 2 weeks ago? I think it was last week, we talked about the feudal aids, the 3 things that a vassal owes a lord, and one of them was pay for his oldest son to become a knight, which I assume means provide him with weaponry, armor, horse, everything that he needs to set him up in a knighthood career. Just the oldest son. Maya, what were you going to say? Then you can have your people pay, which most, if you are of what she called gentle birth, if you are a member of the nobility, you probably have people under you. You probably have somebody working your land and providing you with food. Okay.
I also like that part of the ceremony was that the new knight had to get on their horse without the stirrups.
Yeah, jump on your horse without the stirrups. Awesome. With everybody watching. Okay, so that whacking him with, you didn't say whack, you said hit him with a sword. This is called an accolade. Gently touching. So, but I love this. I got to read this. All right. So the night before, actually, let me just, she says it better. Okay. The young squire who was to be knighted spent the night before the ceremony in a vigil in the church, kneeling before the altar on which his arms were laid, and that means his weapon, not his arms. Okay. In the morning he bathed, was clothed in white, attended Mass, and received the sacrament. Then he made his knightly vows, promising to use his sword in defense of the church and of all who were in distress, and to maintain his knightly honor and integrity. So he stayed up all night praying, got up, went to church. Yes? I do not know the answer to that question. That is a good question. On leaving the church, he was invested piece by piece with his armor, with his knightly spurs, and lastly with his belt and sword. When he was thus fully armed, he knelt before the Lord who was to give him his knighthood, and he received the accolade. Either 3 taps with the flat of the sword on his shoulder, or, my personal favorite, a sharp blow with the fist on the back of his neck.
With the sword or a fist?
No, with a fist, just boom.
That'd be fun.
But I'm going to tell you something here in a minute that enlightens it. The accolade was given him with the words, "In the name of God, Saint Michael and Saint George, I dub thee knight. Be gallant, be courteous, be loyal." So, interestingly, the word column in Latin means neck. I did this just for this moment because it was so fun. Okay. And so it's where we get the word collar. Your collar is the part that goes around your neck, right? So it always had to do with, like, I wonder if whacking you on the back of the neck came first, and then they did the sword thing. I wonder how many whiplash victims there were from being whacked on the back of the neck. Or whoever is knighting you. Well, see, I looked for this yesterday. I could swear I read in Dorothy Mills, maybe you guys can help me, that you can choose who will do the ceremony. But then I looked back in the book and I couldn't find it. Maybe I dreamed it. I don't know. Now, there's a picture. Do many of you have this picture in your book? Okay, this picture is called The Accolade. And obviously we have a lovely lady doing the honors. But it could be Roy, knighting his nephew, or maybe the knight under whom you served as a squire. I don't know. Yeah, Bailey. I don't know.
No, like how bad would that be? Like you get.
Because if it was a tough guy, doing this, boom.
Right.
Maybe that's where the ladies came in. Yeah, Roy. Maybe. I do not know. I don't know a lot of the answers to your questions. You guys will have to find out and tell me. I don't know. I just don't know. It's hard, we see so many movies about this that it's hard to separate what's made up for Hollywood and what was really the case, Then you're gonna whack him good, aren't you? Okay. I brought this book on knights just because who doesn't love to look at cool pictures of armor and things? The first thing I wanted to point out, I'm sure you're probably all familiar with this, but early in the Middle Ages, armor consisted of this, chainmail, right? You're familiar, I'm sure you've all seen movies. It's clunky, heavy. My kids once went, when they were little, we went to a Lord of the Rings, traveling Lord of the Rings exhibit, stuff from the movies in Indianapolis. We drove all the way to Indianapolis for this. Anyway, they had chainmail the kids could put on. And so do you guys remember when we were talking about William the Conqueror? And I brought in that Bayeux Tapestry. You guys had to write a paper on the Bayeux Tapestry. You probably remember. And the pictures in it look like this. And I know you can't really see. There's little circles all over their bodies. You look at this. It's chainmail. That's why there are circles all over their bodies. It's kind of randomly. Not trip myself. Oh, I'm tethered. Can you see that they kind of have circles all over them? And that's a picture from the Bayeux Tapestry. But later on they started putting plates of armor on, and you guys know about this, but I thought it was interesting. First of all, let me read this. By about 1400, the year 1400, some knights wore full suits of plate armor. A suit weighed 44 to 55 pounds. And the weight was spread over the body so that a fit man could run, lie down, or mount a horse unaided in his armor. Stories of cranes being used to winch knights into the saddle are pure fantasy. But armor did have one major drawback. The wearer quickly became very hot. Okay, I'm going to tell a story because I think it's an interesting story. It's kind of a sideline. Say it again. No, summer would be, you know, like fans inside the armor. That would be air-conditioned armor. Yes, yes. But they don't have gravity. Okay, Alice, what were you going to say? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. The interesting, maybe interesting story, and I'll try to make it very short. There was a British king named Richard III, and he's notorious for being evil, and there's a Shakespeare play about him, and he's just a real rotter in the play. And he was hunchback, like he had a deformity in the stories, okay? So the main story that we had about him was from Sir Thomas More, who didn't like him very much and said a lot of bad things about him. But as time goes on, people are like, well, maybe he wasn't deformed, maybe he was not as bad as they say. Plus, if he had this deformity, how could he wear armor and get on horseback and do all this stuff? Okay, so about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, they were digging under a parking lot somewhere in England, and they found the body of Richard III. I know, under a parking lot. It's so sad. Not really. He stole the he killed his brothers to steal the throne, and then we think he killed his nephews. And anyway, so he ended up under a parking lot. But they found this body, and he had this skeletal deformity. And so they could study, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the condition that Richard III had. He really had it. Well, I watched this on PBS, so it has to be true. No, they found a guy in England who had the same skeletal deformity. And they asked him if he would be willing to undergo several months of training in horse riding, and they had armor specially made for him. Because the question is, could Richard III, with his skeletal deformity, have actually done the things that are accredited to him? You know, go out in battle, and the Battle of Bosworth Field is the famous battle. And this guy trained, he was like, yeah, I will do that. So they worked with him, and they trained him to swing a mace, and, you know, and ride with the lance and at the target and everything, until they had not a contest, like the day when they were going to run him through his paces, and he could do it. Even, and like I said, they had special armor made to accommodate this hunch, this hump on his shoulder on that side of his back, which is kind of cool. So my point being, I guess, is first of all, it's a cool story. But second of all, it is even people who were not physically perfect, apparently with training, like they could accommodate the armor and get on the horse and do what they had to do, which is kind of cool. Okay, say again, say it louder. They did not need, he did not need a crane. So eventually we get to these full-blown suits of armor that you see in movies. These are probably going to be, you're not going to wear your fancy schmancy armor necessarily out to battle. It's going to be like, you have your everyday armor and then your dress-up armor, you know, for the party. Yeah, like your China and your everyday. Now, if you are in this helmet, no one knows who you are, right? So how do other people know who that is or who that is or who that is? Name tags, robe. My name is. Family symbols. This is what we call heraldry. The study of all the different family symbols and family crests that you put on your armor, you can put on your shield, and people identify. So I sent your parents, every week I send your parents an email just saying this is what we did this week. And I stuck in the email some links. Unfortunately, you can't just click on them, you have to copy and paste. And I hope they're all still good. But they're about heraldry, making your own coat of arms. So if any of you are interested in that, you know, ask your parents, hey, did Mrs. Ferguson send an email? Actually, I already sent it this morning. And see if the links still work, or just Google heraldry or how to make your own coat of arms. It might be, especially if you have younger siblings that are interested in this, or you're all studying about this together, you could do it together, and maybe you could make a family coat of arms, and you could study why do they choose the certain colors or patterns or animals. It could be fun, but we don't have time to do that together, unfortunately. I got to show you a couple of funny things before we move on. So I asked you, first of all, you got to look at the horse armor. I love the fact that it's a unicorn horse because it has a horn on top. Isn't it cute? No. What, the horses? No, but it's cool. And I'm thinking that if your horse is riding towards another horse and your horse has a horn and their horse doesn't have a horn, that's 1 point for you. But I asked you, here, let's go back to what is the purpose of a tournament? I asked you. All right, Simeon. Okay, so, and why do they do it? It's not super hard. I mean, you can probably guess. Oh, what did you say? Okay, training. I'm sorry. Yeah, Jesse. Bragging rights, Roy. I like that. Yes. Bailey, did you have something to add? No. Okay. And also remember we just mentioned this earlier in the class, the rules about the knights saying, I will not go pillage the churches. I will not go steal the cows from the neighbor. I will not go burn the fields. If you are a young knight and you have a lot of energy and excitement and you want to go do something exciting, it is better to go to a tournament than go pillage your neighbor. I feel like that's a better option, right? Kind of blows off some steam, gives you some practice. So at the tournaments though, you might wear some of your fancy armor. I gotta show you this helmet. It's like a bird. He's got a bird beak.
How do you get your head? Okay, how do you get your head in that?
I feel like it's got to be more than one part, you know, and then a collar. But the funniest thing, okay, I got to show you this helmet. Look at this helmet. Yes, okay, so look at this one on the top. It's called a frog helmet because it does kind of make you look like a frog. And so the eye slits right here. So now, what I am about to tell you is probably true. I want to preface it with that. So there's a movie that my family loves, and it's called A Knight's Tale. All right, it's got Heath Ledger in it. It's the older movie. And so in this movie, it involves a tournament. And so in the tournament, they describe in this movie, which I think is true because of this helmet, you can't, if you're like this and your helmet is like this, obviously you can't see. So you've got to tip your head down. Does that make sense to see? Because if you're like this, you can't see. Okay, so you're riding towards, and you've all seen this on TV or movies, I know. Like they're riding down opposite sides of the lists. They've got a little fence between them, and he's got his lance, and he's okay. He's looking down. All right, but in that position, your eyes are vulnerable. I know it doesn't look like a very big hole, but if the lances splinter, splinters can go in. So you got to tip your head up, and then you just kind of hope that your aim was good, because you can't really see what you're doing at the moment. So in this movie, the main character, Heath Ledger, one of the other characters admires him for his guts because he doesn't tip his head up ever. He wants to see to the very end, and he's willing to risk his eyes just to make sure that he hits on target.
I wonder, are you able to like tip your head down as you're coming towards them, sort of, and then?
Yeah, and that would be the idea, I think, just at the last moment. And like a game of chicken, sort of like who's gonna tip their head up first? Do you know what I mean? And then you're just sort of blindly hoping. What did you say, Jesse? Safety glasses. They're too tough for that, Jesse. They don't need safety glasses. Yeah, Roy. Oh,
Good idea.
that's a good idea. I don't know if people would think you were kind of a cheater if you did that.
If it's not in the rules, then technically it's not cheating.
This is true. I'm glad I don't have to joust against any of you. That's scary.
If you joust against me, it'd be fun, because once you get the middle word going up here, I'm just gonna lean back. Just gonna lean back and it's
Wow. So after you're knighted, after the accolade, after you have been whapped on the back of the neck, or hopefully tapped, you are going to jump on your horse, hopefully without using the stirrups, and ride around and show off. And then you're going to have a feast with your friends and relatives. What sorts of people might entertain you at this feast? Jongleur? A troubadour, yes. So a minstrel is a traveling bard, kind of a lower class. I travel around and you pay me to perform poetry, songs. A troubadour is more a high-class version of that, all right? He's a nobleman, possibly. Maybe he didn't want to be a knight. Maybe he chose another career path, and he became a troubadour. And he comes around telling stories and songs. Because remember, there is no internet. There are no TV, movies, radio, CDs. So what do we do for entertainment? Just like Beowulf, right? Somebody travels around and they come to your village and they sing, they perform this poem for you. Minstrels and troubadours would do the same, yes. What? The boys would play nightly games. Yes. And the jongleur was sort of a catch-all jester, acrobat, comedian, gymnast, magician, just anything and everything. Traveling around, just doing this for money. Hired at various events.
Like the more people can do, the better.
Yes, like a one-person circus. So I feel like this is something we should revive. I feel like we should have, you know, if you go to Circa 21, it's a dinner theater and you get to eat and watch a show. And it's kind of fun. You just eat, and if we had, but don't turn on the TV while you eat. That's wrong. Have any of you ever been to medieval times in Chicago? All right, so you've got a feel for that, right? So they're jousting and they're performing and the horses are out there in front of you. So this is a place there's various ones in the United States. There's one in Chicago, just outside of Chicago. And you go and they have kind of a museum you can walk through earlier before the dinner. And then you go in and they serve you a meal and you're on tiers and they come out in the arena and they joust and they perform and they wave their flags and it's very fun. And you get to eat with your hands. They didn't use forks in the Middle Ages. Hands. Say that again.
It's not that hard to have to use those things.
Yes. So next week, let me give you next week's questions. Next week, I want you guys to read chapter 13, and here, so I'll explain something first before I hand this off. Crusades. We're skipping chapter 12. Chapter 12 is about the manor house, and because of time constraints and that you guys have limited time, you can't just read all day for me. We're skipping chapter 12 and moving straight to the Crusades. I'm sorry, you can read chapter 12 if you want to, Matthias. No one will ban you from reading chapter 12. I just didn't ask any questions about chapter 12. So another thing that occupied many nights from about the year 1095 to, I don't know, the 1300s, were a series of trips to the Holy Land, or one of them didn't make it past Constantinople. It's an ugly one. Where they went on crusade against the Turks who had taken over the holy sites in Jerusalem and surrounding area. And so there stopped being worry in Europe about the neighbors' knights pillaging my fields and robbing the churches because so many knights went off on crusade. So we're going to read about some of those. Now, I need to explain something, and it has to do with your writing assignment. Some of your reading questions have a little picture of the accolade on the back that's in your book. We're going to use this picture for our next writing assignment, which I will explain to you shortly. But I was trying to print it out, and A, it came out in this little baby picture, and I don't know why. And B, I just wouldn't stop spitting them out. It just, and finally I had to turn the printer off because I didn't know how to make it stop. So I didn't want to waste all these papers. So you get your questions on the other side. So some of you lucky ones get the accolade on the back. But because I know that some of you have this picture in your books and some of you do not, I have attached this painting to the email that I have sent to all your parents, okay? So when you go to do your writing assignment, which I'm going to tell you about in a moment, and you say, but I don't have that picture in my book, or you say, but I would really like to see it in color, go to your parents and say, where is Mrs. Ferguson's email? I want to see the painting. You can print it out if you want, you can print it out in color, or you can just bring it up on your screen and not use toner. What?
You're going to demand it.
You are going to demand it from your parents. No, you're going to ask nicely, and then you are going to wait silently without fidgeting with your hands or your feet until they reply. That's what you're going to do. There you go. Oh, some of you guys are lucky. You got a copy of it. 4, 5. Did I count right? And only 2. And we got Rex and whoever else is missing today. So, okay, there's going to be rustling while people put those away. Let's talk about your writing assignment. And then I would like to spend the rest of our time talking about the children of Odin, which I know people have strong feelings about. I know, because Loki is, we got to talk about Loki. Okay, could everybody get out a piece of paper or the back of your reading questions or something you can write on? I need a drink. After I talk and talk and talk, I get really thirsty. This is water. I'm very boring. I do not drink coffee. I have a special tea thing. I should bring that some week. You can brew tea in it, and it's a glass flask. Okay. So here's what I would like you to do for your writing. Are we all ready? Does everybody have something to write on and something to write with? Okay. So do you remember earlier in the year when we were retelling stories with 3 paragraphs? Oh, something understood that. Oh no! Just calm down. Don't decide you don't like it when you don't know yet. In the first paragraph, we gave the characters, the setting, like who are they? When does it happen? Where does it happen? In the middle paragraph, we said, well, what's the problem? What do they want? What do they need? And in the last paragraph, we said, well, how did it get resolved? Did they get what they want? Did they solve the problem? Or maybe they didn't, and that would be kind of a sad story. Well, we're going to do something similar, but not the same, okay? So this is another chance for those of you who really like to write fiction more than nonfiction. I saw the look that you just gave each other. It's okay. But we will be writing nonfiction again soon. So hang on. You can't please all the people all the time, as they say. So much like the journal entries, You can be very creative with this. Here's what I'd like you to do. You are going to take that picture, the accolade, the one that I have emailed to your parents, and which may or may not be in your Dorothy Mills book, but if it is, it's in black and white. And you're going to write 3 paragraphs, all right? And I'm going to tell you what is going to be in each of these paragraphs. In the first paragraph, I want you to describe, much like we did in our stories, who are these people in the picture? Where are they? And what happened before this picture? You get to make this completely up. I would like, however, as before, not to have anachronisms. Like, don't say he drove up in his Corvette that morning, you know, to become knighted. Let's not do that. In other words, you can go as far back in time as you want. You can tell me, this young man who's being knighted, who's receiving the accolade, you could go back and tell me where he was born and how he grew up. This would be a long paper. You could tell me what he did the night before. We know what he did the night before. He spent the night in the church praying, right? And we know what he did that morning. He went to church. So we know some of it. Yeah, Matthias. No, we're not going to time travel. Although if we had more time, like if we were going to do a bunch of these, that would be awesome, but. No. Maybe you should write 2 papers for me. You can write one the way I want and then one the way you want. So does everybody understand? So you're going to look at that picture and you're going to use your imagination. Who are these people? Who is this lady? Is she related to him? And off to the side, there are people watching. Where did they come from? All right. What happened in the night or the days or the weeks or the months before this picture? We all got it? Just paragraph 1. Just paragraph, that's paragraph 1. Yes.
Are the nights? So how far in advance? Okay, so
It's okay.
a squire is knighted, okay? Down the battlefield. How soon after that is the accolade? Like is it months, is it days? Like in church, like in that way. So
How long after what? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So the squire, so before that guy was there, like he was the squire, and then when
Yes.
he knelt down there, he was the squire. Then when she did that,
Yes.
so when was he told that he was going to become a knight?
I don't know the answer to that.
So maybe
Make it up.
it could be months that he was like,
I doubt it, but it could be. And maybe there was no set answer to that. All right, so paragraph 2, I want you to describe the picture. And I don't mean in this picture. We are, okay, what I want you to say is, what is happening at that moment? That's what I mean. I know I'm standing in front of this for some of you, but I'll get out of the way. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Is he nervous? Is he excited? Is he thinking, oh man, I hope I can jump on my horse without hitting the stirrups? Is she saying, oh, this guy is so handsome, he's not attached? What is going through their mind? Those people who are looking on, are they relatives? Are they proud? Are they envious? Oh, if I hadn't been born a peasant, that could be my son. Life is so unjust and unfair, all right? Let your imagination go. Yeah, Simeon. Make them at least 5 to 6 sentences. I don't think you can do this in less than 5 or 6 sentences. 20 sentences. If you have to, you could break paragraph 1 into two, and describe different things, 2 parts.
What if the princess got this
And what if she's thinking, man, I'm really angry they stopped the whole whack 'em on the back of the neck thing. I was looking forward to that. He used to pull my hair when he was little. Okay, use your imagination. The 3rd paragraph, you're going to tell me what happened after. By the way, I'm giving you 2 weeks for this. Because I really want you to just run with it. Let's have some fun. You guys have chucked out a lot of writing assignments for me. Let's just take a big deep breath. And for those of you who love this sort of thing, just run with it. Yes? A movie as reference? I don't. Well, these people wouldn't know the movie. But you can describe something that you saw in a movie as happening then. I'm okay with that. Yeah, but don't steal all your ideas from the movie. Come up with some of your own. Okay. So what are they going to do? What will they do next? So we know he's going to go out and jump on his horse and he's going to ride around and say, I'm a knight, look at me. And then they're going to have a feast with perhaps troubadours, minstrels, and jongleurs.
And he's going to say sorry to his little sister that he did.
Perhaps. But you can also stretch this out in what will happen in the years to come. Months, weeks, years to come. That wasn't really in the right order. Will he become a great defender of his country? Will he go on great and glorious deeds? Will he become one of those evil blackguard knights who waylay people by the side of the road and challenge them? I hope not. That would be a sadder story. Yes, Jesse? Yes. Yes.
Oh my God, sorry.
Yes. Because honestly, this is like joining the military, okay? When you join up, when you sign up for knighthood, hey guys, are you with me? When you sign up for knighthood and you have to go at your Lord's bidding to war, on crusade, you very well may not be coming home. That's the truth. What? That is what would be happening. All right. Does everybody understand the assignment? Are there any questions? Okay. So you've got 2 weeks. Look, everybody look at me. Don't wait a week because you have 2 weeks and say, I just don't need to do that at all. I'm not even going to think about it. And maybe even I will wait a week and a half and not think about it. And then 2 days before class, I will think about it then. Don't be that person. Don't do that. That is not a good plan. All right? You will do a better job and you will feel less pressured and you'll have more fun with it if you work on it a little each day. Okay, yes, Matthias. Yes, but what is your source more than just your own brain? You know what? Matthias is obviously interested in this assignment. I'm going to let him run with it. But do you understand, Matthias, that we're just kind of making up a story? But if you want to look details up, you go for that. All right? Because I had to say today a lot of times, I don't know. Not a knight. I don't know. Yesterday, I have already written down on my paper to find out from my students from yesterday, they were trying to figure out why in the world they just felt the unjustness of only letting nobility become knights and because it was cost prohibitive, and why the noblemen were just paying the way of everybody to become a knight, and I feel like taxes would rise or something. Well, there's got to be an answer to that. And also what it was that was so expensive. Is it something other than horse armor weapons, which I would think would be pretty expensive right there. No, because the people on the horse will just come and whack you as they ride by. Okay, so you're going to read chapter 13. and answer the questions. You're going to start your story, and let's talk about the children of Odin. Let me give you your assignment for next week. I think that we found out last week that everybody's book is not exactly like mine. I know mine isn't. So in the Children of Odin, if your book looks like mine, the budget version, all right, it is going to be pages 45 through 89. If you have the deluxe version, you are going to start with the story called Odin Wins the Magic Mead. It's actually Odin Wins for Men the Magic Mead, but I'm shortening it. That's the first story you're going to read. And you're going to read all the way through to the Children of Loki.
Oh, yay!
Oh, and they're disgusting. Oh, don't ruin it. Don't tell. Oh, okay. So you're going to start with the story Odin wins for Men the Magic Mead, and go through, including the Children of Loki, for next week. Okay? Got that? So obviously there are strong feelings about Loki. Okay. Anybody before I ask? Make a comment. Let's start us off.
They decided to draw Loki, and it's been driving me
Oh.
nuts because in the movies he's got like this jet black hair and it looks really good, but in this book, it's like, and he's not funny, which is like one of the things that like
He's
really
not funny.
in the movies.
He's not funny. What, 45 through 89 that we're going to read, or that we read? We read through page 44 this last time, 45 through 89. Are we good? Yes. Okay. So, all right, because this comes up and we have some time. So Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki in, if I can market him in another way, he's actually a great Shakespearean actor. He had a classical education. He can read Latin and Greek. Tom Hiddleston. And so was not, I'm sorry, I'm going to get boos and hisses, but I had an argument with my daughters because, not a big argument, but they think he is quite attractive as Loki, and I don't like him. I don't like the way he looks as that character. So I had this Tom Hiddleston. So a few years ago, they remade some Shakespeare history plays, and they remade a set of 4 plays, Richard II, Henry IV, parts 1 and 2, and Henry V. And Jeremy Irons played Henry IV, and Tom Hiddleston played Henry V. So I like him when he does Shakespeare. Sorry. But no, he's a very different character, which brings up something I think we've talked about before. Why do movie makers change stories? Disney does it all the time, right? We talked about The Little Mermaid. I'm going to ask Alice. And then they'll make more money. Right. So what do you think about this version, or the known version? Because I don't know that a lot of people know these stories. Do you know what I mean? Like they know Thor has a hammer and stuff like that, vaguely. But what do you think what did they do in the movie version that makes it more appealing to people than if they were having the characters be more like this? Does that make sense? That question make sense? Okay. They're breaking stuff all the time. Like there's destruction and craziness all the time, isn't there? Okay. This is actually quite dark. I'm thinking of, just a second, hold on to it, don't forget. I'm thinking of the fact that from the very beginning, they found Asgard, the walls of Asgard, based on treachery and deceit, right? Treachery comes into Asgard right at the get-go when Loki, dupes that horse by turning into a horse himself and lures the horse away so they don't get the wall done. And it's a cheaty trick, right? They had an agreement. What?
Yeah, demons turned into a little pony and it lured Pegasus away. So he couldn't save him.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Okay, Isabella, what did you want to say? This is true. This is true. It's difficult. Not everything in a story translates well to the big screen, does it? Okay, Bailey. But and I agree. It's down, like the Little Mermaid story is not something you want your children to watch. Not for something that old. When it's fairy tales or it's myths and legends, there's no copyright issues. You can use that anytime you want. Okay, so here's something I hear you making a point. It brings these stories back for a new audience. People who might not know the stories, and at least it's a version of the stories. Okay. Well, starting in 1950. That would be the big TV. I mean, kids have been growing up on TV for generations now. Yes. Mm.
And like you talk about this book being dark, and I think that to a certain degree it's dark, especially for Ragnarok. That one too, but they balance it out, so it doesn't seem as dark because they balance it out because really like Toby's fighting off a bunch of monsters, he's gonna die with his
Yes. Yes.
So like they balance it out so that maybe it is dark, but then they added this stuff that makes it be a bit. Maybe that's what.
I want to bounce off what Maya just said. Let me read this paragraph. This is the very, very beginning, okay? Far away and long ago, these gods lived. There was another earth at that time, an earth green and beautiful, but the terrible winds that blew leveled down forests and hills and dwellings. Then fire came and burnt the earth. There was darkness, for the sun and the moon were devoured. The gods had met with their doom, and the time in which all these things happened was called Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. The Norse peoples, the German peoples, the people we met in The Dragon and the Raven, the people living in Northern Europe, these were their gods. What would it be like to live under a system where you know your gods will fail and die someday? I just want you to I want to hear what you have to say. I just want to just take a moment and imagine your gods will all fail and die. And imagine what that does to your life. there is no security, right? Your gods are not morally virtuous. They cheat, trick, and deceive, right, to get walls built. Once upon a time, gold came into Asgard. Remember that story? And those women with the gold, until Odin had to tell them to leave because greed grew up in Asgard. So, does your life, you are right now one of these people. These are your gods. We're using our imaginations. What is the point of life? What shall I do with my life? Go ahead, Maya, what are you going to say?
And one of the books that I was reading is he waits with God, and then he waits in the Muhammad or like one of the phrases he said to him. And he called it like balance in our time, and that's how
But you will fail.
he will fail. And I find it surprising that like people believe that really they're gonna fail. You're not gonna get you're not gonna win.
On the one hand, I admire the courage that goes out and says, we may fail, but we're going to try anyway. But on the other hand, imagine you're a young, I'm going to say Viking because it's the most convenient, Norse, Germanic, young person growing up. There's no security, there's no salvation, and it's all going to fail. Can you kind of understand why you might as well just go steal, pillage, and murder? Do you see the connection I'm making there? If there's, in the Bible says if this is true, then we should just say eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, right? That should be our attitude. If there is nothing beyond ourselves, if this is all there is, and anything beyond us is doomed to fail, let's just turn it into one big party till we all die. What's the point? And I just feel like when we read about this idea, so all these stories, as we finish this book, keep in mind, they're all going to die. Not all of it, but most of it. It's all going to fail. And it's hard for that not to be dark. Does that make sense to everybody? That's depressing and dark. Okay, Maya, and then you, Bailey. Yes. It's a big difference because there's hope and no hope. That's the difference. Bailey, what did you want to say? It's okay. I do it too.
So if we were living in that era, they did think that. So it's not everything was going to fail. That's why they always stand for Hiddleston.
But
That's why they died. Not just because they had committed fraud.
Maybe.
More so than it was fraud.
because there's no hope here. You might as well live for glory,
Yeah.
right? Because there's nothing else here.
But at the same time, how they live and
Well, is it fun? We,
it's what they believed back then.
it is what they believe.
Because back when they didn't have X-rays or all this stuff, they were fine. Fine.
They didn't have access to what? I didn't hear what you said.
But to go dig up stuff and find old cloth,
Okay.
that was basically.
But I don't understand how that, I'm sorry, I'm not following.
And,
But they did believe that, it's true. But to say, could we have okay, this is not very popular nowadays, but I'm saying it because it's true. We have an idea that all opinions and beliefs are supposed to be equal somehow, but they're not. They're just not. And reality is, God wins. Ragnarok comes to hell. it will be broken apart. And the last enemy to be defeated is death. That's the true story. And can you see how if you believe that with all your heart, it makes you a different sort of person than if you believe this? This is dark. And you know what? Life here can be hard, right? Life can be hard. But we have hope and no hope. It's the difference. So anyway, what I want you to picture is the missionaries who went out among these people. St. Boniface, we read about, I think I had you read about him before over the summer, was a missionary to these Germanic people, and he cut down, it was a tree of Thor, tree of Odin.
Oh, yeah.
Cut down the tree. I can't ever remember. It was a sacred tree. And he's like, let him come take care of himself. Boom, I'll cut down his tree. If he wants to deal with it, he can deal with me. And of course, nothing happened to Boniface, which made them think, oh my goodness, they're helpless. Our gods are really kind of helpless. Tell me about this Christian God. He's not helpless, and he brings hope. So we just have a few minutes, but so Odin, the last couple of stories I had you read, does Odin know everything? Odin does not know everything. These gods do not know everything. They know something. They know it's all going to fail. But Odin needs wisdom, and he goes to the well of Mimir. And what does he have to give in return for, say it to me, his eye? He has to give his eye for wisdom. In other words, he has to make a sacrifice. Now, I want to tell this, and I'm going to use slightly different words, but I'm going to tell the story. So, a god who wanted to bring wisdom to his people and some amount of hope to his people had to go and sacrifice himself to bring this. Do you see where I'm going with that? A god had to sacrifice to bring back what was needed for mankind to have any sort of hope. Now, as far as we know, when people told these stories, it was before they were in contact with Christians. But isn't it interesting, and some of you, we talked about this last year, in Greek mythology. Isn't it interesting that people who don't even know about the gospel, they don't even have the Bible, but somehow deep in their hearts, there's this desire that one of the gods would come and make a sacrifice for them, to care for them. That's what we need. We need gods who will sacrifice. And then it came true for us. It's the story that's true. Anyway, that's cool. I will let you guys go. There's tons about Loki in the next section. We are Loki all over the place. So let's target Loki next week and talk a little more about why in the world they allow him to stay in Asgard. That is the question. See you next week.
Well, they tried to look for rock and snake.